Hi guys, my name is Harvey Toeface and today I'm bringing you yet another Kaldheim theory crafting deck. Today we are looking at the Giants archetype, as Giants in Kaldheim do look insane. There are a couple of cards that are really good for that, and we're going to be showing you those today. So as you can see from here, it's a 3-colored deck. We're splashing a little bit of black, primarily for Crocs and some removal. But we'll go through the deck, why I think it will work well together, and then as always, leave comments below if you have any suggestions to the deck. These are all just theory, so until you actually play them, you never really know if they're going to work that well. But I think this one is going to be good fun to play. So we start with the Blood Chief's Thirst, which is some basic removal. Then we've got Fire Giant's Fury, which is target giant you control gains +2/+2 and trample. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player this turn, exile that many cards from the top of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. So what I like about this is obviously giving some of these creatures trample super important, because giants are big, but they don't necessarily have trample. Being able to get through some trump blockers helps a lot. And then also the fact having some cards in exile that you can then play, it's almost like a card draw type thing. So if you're low on cards in your hand, you can exile some cards and you've got options to play then. Then we've got Invasion of the Giants, which is a nice, cheap saga. It's 2 mana. Step 1 is scry 2. Step 2 is draw a card. Then you may reveal a giant card from your hand. When you do, Invasion of the Giants deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. And then step 3, the next giant spell you cast this turn costs 2 less. So what this means is if you get this out on turn 2, then on turn 5, you could cast a Cyclone Summoner, which I'll show you at the end of the videos here. So it's nice because it means you might be able to get a couple of giants out on the field if you cast this later in the game. And also something with some basic scry is quite useful. Scry and draw are quite useful for these decks. We haven't got like opts and things like that in. So next we have Glimpse of the Cosmos. This is a draw effect. So look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest onto the bottom of your deck in any order. And then, as long as you control a giant, you may cast Glimpse of the Cosmos from your graveyard by paying 1 island rather than paying its mana cost. If you would cast it from the graveyard, exile instead. So this is really good. This is like a bit of a draw and a little bit of a scry type thing, because you get to look at the top 3 and decide whether they stay top, and you can put 1 in your hand and the rest go bottom. Really nice. And the fact you can double cast it as well is really good. We then have 3 Heartless Acts for a bit more removal for the early game. Then we have Croxer. When Crox enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. Whenever Croxer enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards a card. Then each opponent who did discard a non-land card this way loses 3 life. Then you can escape it for 4 mana by exiling 5 other cards from your graveyard. And then it's a 6/6 giant. So it fits well with the archetype of the deck. It also causes the opponent some issue where they have to discard some cards. And it's also, in effect, a 6/6 giant for 4 mana once you've cast the 2 costs. So yeah, pretty powerful for what we're doing here. We then have Aegir the Freezing Flame. Whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt damage, is dealt XX damage, if a giant, wizard or spell you control dealt damage to it this turn, draw a card. So this could be really useful when we've got our big giants out that don't have trample. This is going to give us some card draw to keep other options in our hand. So this is really good because our excess damage isn't going to waste, so to speak. We're getting some card draw out of it, which is really nice. We then have Bone Crusher Giant. We don't really need to explain Bone Crusher Giant. It's just an excellent card. And the Bone Crusher Giant will really combine well with Calamity Bearer. So Calamity Bearer is a Kaldheim card. If a giant source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. So turn 4, you could have a Bone Crusher Giant attacking that's going to deal 8 damage to something. Now that is scary, isn't it? If you also combine that with Aegir the Freezing Flame, you're definitely going to be getting card draw. So the Calamity Bearer is a key part of this deck because it just means it's just blowing up our giants to be dealing so much damage, which means they kind of have to block everything. And if they can't block everything, they're going to get a big hit to their life total. So the next card we've got is the Battle of Frost and Fire. Now this is one of those enchantments that's just amazing. So the 3-step saga. First step is Battle of Frost and Fire deals 4 damage to each non-giant creature and each planeswalker. So that's just going to really hit the board hard. Now I don't know if that will... No. Sorry. So the next card we've got is Battle of Frost and Fire. This is one of those saga cards that are really amazing in Kaldheim. So counter 1, Battle of Frost and Fire deals 4 damage to each non-giant creature and each planeswalker. So a really good board leveler against the opponent, because we're running just giants basically, so it's not going to affect us. The only creature it would affect... No, we've got nothing but giants, so it's not going to affect us. Second turn is Scry 3. And then the third turn, whenever you cast a spell with converted mana cost of 5 or greater this turn, draw 2 cards and discard a card. But it's really the first step that helps out in a later game when they've got a bunch of tokens or something. You can just wipe all of those out. The fact it's 4 damage as well is huge. So we then have the Quakebringer at 5, which is another key component. Your opponents can't gain life. At the beginning of your upkeep, Quakebringer deals 2 damage to each opponent. This ability triggers only if Quakebringer is on the battlefield or if Quakebringer is in your graveyard and you control a giant. So, basically, if a Quakebringer has been milled, it will start doing 2 damage. If it's on the field, it will do 2 damage. If you then kill it, it's in the graveyard, you'll still do 2 damage. So that's a really powerful card. So it's just basically... If you get those, if an opponent's playing Dimir Rose and they mill all 4 of them, they get an 8 damage a turn. Unless they can exile cards from my graveyard, they're not going to be able to do anything. And then finally, we have 2 copies of Cyclone Summoner. When Cyclone Summoner enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, return all permanents to their owner's hands, except for giants, wizards, and lands. Now, this is amazing because it means that if we have a Battle of Frost and Fire out, that would be returned to my hand. If we have an Invasion of the Giants out, that would be returned to my hand. Now, if we could return a Battle of Frost and Fire to our hand, then next turn, if there is a next turn, cast it again. And you have to consider if they're not running giants and they have everything returned to their hand and we have a full board because all our creatures are giants, that's pretty much saying that's a win. So... we like having a couple of these. Obviously, it's a 7 mana creature. 7 mana creature, so it is quite tough to get out on the field, but this is a late game win condition. Anything that's been sort of Banishing Lighted or Glass Casketed would return as well. So this is basically saying I'm going to have things on the field and you're not. Now, so if we do face giants, it's still a 7/7, so it's still impactful. And we can use it with things like Battle of Frost and Fire, as I said before. And the land base is quite interesting as well. We've got 25 lands. We've got 4 Blightstep pathways. We've got 4 Clearwater pathways. We've got 4 River Glide pathways. We have 4 Fable Passages, 2 Castle Embereths, just to buff the creatures a little bit. Now we have 2 snow-covered islands, 4 snow-covered mountains, and a snow-covered swamp. Now these are all basic lands, so Fable Passage will retrieve them. And we're only having the snow-covered ones because they're nice. We don't have anything that's utilising snow-covered magic, I don't think, in this. So that's the deck we've got. Like I say, it looks like this will be really fun to play. Just with the Battle of Frost and Fire and the Cyclone Summoner at the late game. We've got enough early game to disrupt our opponent with the Bloodchief's Thirst, the Heartless Axe, and the Croxer. And also the Bone Crusher Giants as well. Just taking away their early threats and getting us through to the later game. I'm not 100% sure if 25 mana is enough here. Maybe we'd be tempted to run one more, but I'm going to leave it at 25 for now. So I hope you enjoyed this Theorycraft. Do let me know if you have any suggestions. Obviously, there's a lot of different giant creatures in Kaldheim. So this has a lot of scope in way to go. I have splashed in a bit of black. You could even splash in green for the Bone Stalker Giant as well, if you wanted to go that way. And I suppose the advantages with that would be you could run things like Cultivate to get your land out earlier to hit your big creature at the end. But I went a different route. Let me know what you think to the deck, and I will see you guys on the next video. Thank you guys for watching.